Welcome to the show, All Things Writing. I am your host, Brian the Writer. Let me take you on a journey through my writing life and introduce you to some of the amazing talent that exists in the writing world. Whether you are looking for a little advice or just to catch an interesting interview, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All Things Writing starts now. Good day to you all. I want to thank you all for coming over and joining me today on this episode of All Things Writing. It's a shivery January. What can I say? It's a little cold up here in Northern Virginia. It's just the way it is. Is shivery a word? I don't know. Shivery may be a word. Well, whatever. I have a very special surprise for you. Well, okay. So here's my surprise, okay? Very soon, I'm going to be joined here on the show. Just in a few moments. Just don't get too excited, okay? Just in a few moments, I'm going to be joined by Mr. Mark Loeffelholz, and he's the author. He's the author. Let me try that again. Let me speak English, ladies and gentlemen. He is the author of the Oscar Jade series. However, he recently released a book called The Disappearance of Wiley Hood. We're going to talk all about that book and on this episode of All Things Writing. It's going to be fantastic. I'm really, really excited about it. But before we do any of that, won't you please be a lamb and hit that subscribe button? I know a lot of you don't, but please hit that subscribe button. I really, really would appreciate it. I want to grow an audience of gazillions. Gazillions, it's a number like chivalry. It's a word No, there is actually a word gazillion, I think. Hey, well, whatever. But I want that many listeners, okay? And I can't do that without your support. And in order to get your support, I need you to hit that subscribe button. Any support is definitely appreciated. This February, I'm thrilled to announce the third book in the Dramatic Dead series. You can catch Dirk and Carrie and Keith and, of course, Victor on their last great adventure. So I'm pretty proud of the way it all turned out. And this is going to be the final book in the series. For those of you who don't know, by the way, I am giving away the first book in the series. I'm going to put a QR code, and here, somewhere around here. And I'm going to put up a QR code. You can download the book now and start reading it. Get done with it. Now, there's a second book in the series. And then, you can go get the third, and then you can read all of them and enjoy and find out what the group has going for it. So winter is my harder time. There's no great secret about that, by the way. Winter slows me down. It hurts my joints. It makes me tired. The longer evenings tend to, it gets dark super early, and whatever. It's not a lot of fun. However, now I personally, so this is sort of a personal story. I grew up in Chicago. Chicago, you drink coffee. Drink a lot of coffee. We always drink coffee. However, the problem with that is as you get older, caffeine acts a little bit differently in your body. It can sometimes keep you up in the middle of the night. Nobody likes that, You don't really want that. So what you really need to do is consider something else, another way. So I'm going to suggest, why don't you try a superfood, okay? Magic Mind is a superfood. They approached me a while ago, said, hey, how would you like to become a sponsor? And I became a sponsor, and I've become an advocate. This works extremely well. I can tell you from my own personal experience. Honestly, I would talk about it even if they hadn't approached me. It's fantastic. It has, and I have my notes up here on the screen, so I remember to say the word is, it's called a matcha. I'd never heard of matcha before. Okay, so I wrote it on a little piece of paper, so I remember. It gives you a little bit of caffeine, but it also has other compounds inside of it that it slows down the caffeine absorption. So think of it this way: instead of a spike, it's more of a nice gradual hump. You get the caffeine, but you don't burn through it all really, really fast. So it keeps you going for a while. It's fantastic. It also has all kinds of great things, all things that are very, very good for you anyway. It also contains lion's mane mushrooms. Now, if you have not heard about lion's mane mushrooms, that's a hard word to say. Um, you should know about it. Actually, a friend mentioned it to me a few months ago. And the nice part about it is if you have things like inflammation, like I do in my joints and everything else, lion's mane mushroom does make a huge difference because it helps to control that inflammation a little bit. It's pretty great. Actually, it's a pretty great additive. You can get it in the store, and it's being included in a lot of different things that are supposedly good for you. Magic Mind is good for you if you look at the ingredients. Uh, there's not that many ingredients in it, and all of them are super healthy, naturally occurring. I'm telling you, this is good stuff. Um, yeah. So, uh, oh, by the way, lion's mane mushroom also helps support brain function as well. It keeps your brain going. I know that for me in the afternoon, sometimes the brain stops working the way it's supposed to. So, a little lion's mane helps to keep those kinds of things going. It's pretty fantastic. It's a great opportunity to try it. Try it out. Um, as a matter of fact, and I know the month of January is rolling along quite quickly. Got away from me faster than I really thought it would. But for the month of January, what you can do is you can go to um, it's magicmind.com slash Jan all things. So magicmind.com slash JAN all things, all one word. And that will get you a discount. But you can also couple that with my own personal discount code, which is all things 20. So all things 20 will get you an additional 20% off. So it's a really great deal if you order for month of January. It ends up being like a 75% off deal. But hey, here's the thing is, the wonderful people of Magic Mind said, listen, what we can do is we can make all things 20 just a permanent thing. So you guys can always get a discount by going all things 20 at your, when we ask to put in a discount code, they'll give you a discount. What a deal, right? Magic Mind, I've used it. I've seen some great stuff, great impacts on my life, and it is definitely worth giving a shot. Hey, here's the thing: you give it a shot and you don't like it, it's fine, not a big deal. But I pretty much guarantee, I think you're gonna like it. I think you're gonna like it. Okay, so anyway, speaking of things which support creativity, right? There's a bit of a revolution in the writing world. Yes, we as writers have woken up to the world of audiobooks. The world of audiobooks are really, really important. As a matter of fact, I heard from one person, Mr. Scott Ellis, that 25% of the world's books selling today happen to come from audiobooks. So audiobooks are a great way to add to your income as an author. But I know that a lot of you, as listeners and readers of books, get your stuff in that way too. So, one of the good friends of the show, again, Scott Ellis, came to me and said, hey, we have this new audiobook coming out, and we think you're going to love it. So, what we would like to do is we give you we're going to put you in contact with this person and, see if it works, see if it fits for the show. Well, I read the book. It's the Disappearance of Wiley Hood. It's a fantastic book, very, very enjoyable. I'm going to probably be doing a review of it, probably the end of this month, maybe next month. We'll see. As I'm fond of saying, I'd love to sit here and tell you all about this guy, but I'm not going to do that. It's going to be way more fun to tell, to hear it from them. So let's do that. Let's do that. So welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Loeffelholz. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Brian, it's great to be here.
I am always amazed when people agree to come on the show. I think I probably say that every single show. Like anybody says, yeah, I want to go hang out with Brian for a while, but I appreciate it because if people didn't come hang out with me, I just talked to my imaginary friends all day, and that would not be good.
Well, and I say that to my readers all the time. I say, readers, without you, I'm just talking to myself. So I appreciate you a
Yeah.
great deal.
Yeah, it keeps me out of the psych ward.
At least for now, in my case.
So, Mark, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, I had a whole career in retail management. I've always been a writer. I've been a writer since I was in 6th grade. And I read Ian Fleming's On Her Majesty's Secret Service for the first time. And it changed my life because what he could do with the printed word absolutely electrified my preteen mind. And then I read them all. And of course, I'm a voracious reader, but I'm a big fan of adventure and escapism, Edgar Rice Burroughs, James Bond, all of that stuff. I read all the trashy spy novels that I could get my hands on when I was in junior high. And then I wrote my first novel in high school, which is a tragic mess, and it's in a fireproof box.
Oh, yeah.
It's in a fireproof box, and nobody's ever going to see it. Then I wrote my second one in the early 80s, and it was also not great. So I decided to get serious about it. A little too late in life. I procrastinated a little too much, and procrastination for writers is not an unheard of phenomenon. There's insecurity.
Writers procrastinate?
I know. It's hard to believe. I guess I'm the only one.
No, you're most definitely not the only one. It's funny because I really didn't start writing until I was 45. No, 40. I was 40 when I started writing, and I'm 50 now, so 10 years. Huzzah.
Right. Well, you're the I've got 11 years on you. So, but I've been published for 12 years or so. Not 14 years, I don't know. But I started way too late. I should have started, and if I could do the redo, like on a video game where you can just, bail out and reload, I would have started much younger. Right, exactly. I would have started much, much earlier than I did.
Yeah, I think that's true of a lot of us. I think it's very good advice for young writers.
Write anything. Anything, even if it's bad, especially if it's bad, and learn from it. Yeah,
we don't get better if we don't write poorly.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is exactly true.
Well, what I'll say is not poor writing is The Disappearance of Wiley Hood. I haven't quite gotten to the end of it yet. I'm listening to it as I drive in the mornings and the afternoons, and I take my dog for a walk. So it's and that is to say, actually, my drive is not that far to get to where I'm going in the mornings or the afternoons. So it really isn't, it really isn't a ton of time. But I am nearly done with it. Why don't you tell us about the book?
Well, Wiley began as a short story, about 5,500 words in 1988. And that's when I really started to decide to get serious about writing. I decided to try to learn the short story format. So I sat down and I wrote half a dozen or 8 short stories, and a couple of them weren't great at all. But then a couple of them I really thought I was onto something. And as I was learning to write, I was always told that the short story form is much harder to master than the novel form is, because you can get away with a lot of things in a novel that you cannot get away with in a short story.
You've got a little more room.
Absolutely. Every word always counts, but every word particularly counts in a short story. I wanted to do something in the vein of a Twilight Zone. I dabbled in all kinds of genres as I was writing short stories. But I was always a fan of the original Twilight Zone, particularly a fan of Richard Matheson, who wrote 16 episodes of the original Twilight Zone show with Rod Serling. The Terror at 30,000 feet, or whatever it was, the one where William Shatner is in the airplane and there's a gremlin on the wing.
On the wing of this plane.
That's Richard Matheson, and he also, The Incredible Shrinking Man, What Dreams May Come, the movie with Robin Williams. Wrote a lot of great short stories, and some of them are truly disturbing and terrifying. So I was really inspired by that. And the movie Incredible Shrinking Man, and not to give anything away, but at the end of that, I was so transfixed by the ending of that short story, I began to think, what if we could do that and filter it through a existentialism filter? What if he's not physically shrinking? What if his existence comes into question and his perception of what his existence is? So the original short story rather, was 5,500 words. The ending is essentially unchanged.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it as a screenplay about 20 years ago, and won some awards on a peer review website.
Nice.
About 10% of people really didn't like the ending, but the vast majority of people, I received very positive.
You can't please.
Response
You
from
can't and never will please everyone.
No, that's a fact. But when I decided to write the novel, I used the screenplay as an outline. And let me tell you, there's no better possible outline for a novel than a screenplay that you've already written. So I almost felt guilty about how easy, when it came time to do the novel itself, I was a little guilty about how easy it just kind of spilled out of me. And I assigned myself to write Wiley as a reward for getting through my second of my private detective stories, which took me the better part of 10 years to write because of just various things: life, full-time job, drama, all the things that will hijack a writer, especially an early career writer. So
it happens, and that is part of the. I always say that, and if you want to drive high school English teachers nuts, say that you say to the class, you never are going to learn to write sitting in the classroom. You learn to write by living.
That's true. Boy, that is so true.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's safe to say that's where the idea of Wiley comes from. Real life, your experiences.
Yes, I was in the insurance industry for 10 years, and that is at the heart of the Wiley Hood, the experience of the protagonist. He's a creative person. He's an artist who finds himself taking an easy path into the corporate world where everything just seems to come very easily and naturally, but ultimately it is not spiritually fulfilling. It's not, it does not give him the kind of satisfaction that I think people want in their life. And some people, if that's your joy, then good for you, but it certainly wasn't the case with Wiley, and it wasn't the case with me. And I moved out of retail and then I moved out of the corporate world into retail management, which was not an improvement by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I think it's true that anytime you have to do a pursuit like that, you start to you start to feel like that part of you that is the creative part can slip away. And it's interesting because in the book, Wiley has these signposts of people saying, "Don't let go of your joy." They're the cracks in the mask, and I love how you handle that.
Yeah, it was kind of my advice to myself, and I ignored that advice for a long time, which is why I didn't start writing seriously until late in life. And now that I'm in late in life, air quotes, there's a sense of urgency now that informs every time I sit down in front of the laptop and work. I've got a lot to say. Suddenly I have a lot to say and an uncertain amount of time in which to say it.
But again, I think a lot of that is life experience. And
yes,
there's this wonderful scene where Wiley is at the retreat in Miami, and he's sitting across the table from Jack, and Jack is just getting absolutely blasted. And he talks about how Wiley is an artist and to never give up that part of him that brings
Right.
him joy. And that's the crack we see. That's the crack I'm talking about. One of the cracks
Yeah.
I'm talking about. And
Jack Stansfield is one of my favorite characters. He did not exist until the novel. He was not in the short story. He wasn't even in the screenplay because you are so pressed for time when you're writing a film script,
yeah.
So he only exists in the novel, and he is absolutely one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, full-length film script is only 100 to 110 pages total.
Yeah.
And you have to cut out anything that's not really dialogue. And that's tough. It's tough to squeeze it all in. Yeah.
Especially an internalized story like this, because this is a very internalized, this is about a guy's personal internalized experience.
Well, did Jack come from a person in particular, or is he an amalgam of people?
He's kind of an amalgam of people. He, to me, he represents Wiley's conscience. I mean, on one aspect, he is a very successful executive, and he seems to have mastered, the compromise of the corporate world, but he really hasn't, and that becomes apparent as you move forward in the story that he's struggling like everybody else is, and maybe isn't managing it as well as you think he's managing it.
I always like to think your heroes, even in the writing world, when they get up in the morning, their knees hurt too. So
yeah,
that is
absolutely,
that's true of all of us. So we can easily sort of see where Jack and this experience that Wiley is having is drawn from your own personal experience. And I was just sitting here thinking as you were talking, was there a moment for you where you sat back in that corporate world and went, what the hell am I doing?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there absolutely was. And my first son was about to be born, and the human resources department of a corporate entity. Probably the less specific things I say, the better, for any number of reasons. But
non-disclosure agreements you may have signed.
Exactly. Just being prudent all the way around. It was very much, I had and I don't know if it was one particular moment, but it's like, I can't live my life like this. So I walked out, and I'm like, I will do anything. So I tended bar for a couple years, bought diapers and formula with tip money, and then became a manager of an Irish pub, or an assistant manager. Then moved into retail after that for better money. And that's the only way you can make any money at all in retail, is to move into management. Yeah. And there's a part of your soul that gets traded away in that transaction too. So it certainly was not the answer. And I began to seriously at that point consider, well, I just need to be writing. I need to be writing while I'm feeding my family and paying for my house.
I had worked for a gas company at one point, and and it's kind of funny because as I'm listening to Wiley tell his story, I am thinking about my own experiences. And anybody who's worked in the corporate environment is going to love this book because they understand what Wiley's going through. They've been there. They've done that. They've sat there and went, should I just get up and walk out and not come back?
Yeah. Who the hell are these people? Who the hell are these people around me? And how have they done it for 30 years?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I literally, I did. I worked for a gas company, and I sat down at my desk one morning and I opened up my emails, and I was there maybe 5 minutes. I pushed myself away from the desk and I walked up to my boss and I said, I quit, and I left.
Good for you.
They're like, what? Yeah, I mean, that is something that happens to people, and I think Wiley is very much going through this sort of weird whirlwind life adventure. I what is the we sort of danced around it, but is there a central message that you're trying to convey with Wiley here?
Yeah, I think probably if there is a central message, it's be true to yourself. Be be who you are, not who you're expected to be, not what convention demands you to be, not what, your bosses or mentors necessarily want you to be. Not even what your friends want you to be. And Wiley, when he takes this corporate gig, he's got a bunch of creative artist type friends who just think he's going over to the dark side, like Darth Vader. He's
Yeah.
Anakin Skywalker goes to the dark side. And so ultimately, though, he discovers that he wants to paint again. And when he compulsively and reflexively begins to paint, his life changes in direct proportion to his creative energy. And that is the kind of the catch-22, the pivot point of the story, and that's where it really starts to go sideways and get weird. And I had so much fun, especially in the second half. The first half of the book is really setting up the dominoes, carefully and methodically setting up the dominoes. And then about halfway through the book, I go, bing. And then I just let them tumble and I follow the action from there. And I just kind of transcribe what I see.
Yeah, I mean that's the trick, right? Chronicle the follies of your own creation, basically.
Great.
But I have to ask. So we have the Oscar Jade series, which is a noir mystery.
Yeah, 1940s private eye stuff set in Miami Beach, Florida, beginning in 1941, and I like to describe them as, like an old Humphrey Bogart movie, although R-rated with a lot of action, especially in the third act. It's escapist. It's very much informed by my initial experience reading the old Ian Fleming James Bond novels. Anybody who's read the Fleming novels will know that they differ drastically from the movies, obviously. They were written from 1953 through 1964. Different time. It was the Cold War era. Sensibilities were different. They're now editing them for political correctness. Future books are going to be thinned out in certain areas. So I don't know. I if I were to ever get really big and go viral, I don't know how long Oscar Jade would survive in the white hot glare of the of today's culture. I guess we'll find out. If I'm lucky, we'll find out how it goes.
Well, I think that I am absolutely flabbergasted is not a strong enough word. That they do this to works of art.
Right.
Would you go and put clothes on the statues showing naked parts in the Louvre? I mean,
right. Or the rotunda of the Capitol.
Or the rotunda of the Capitol. Right, exactly. What are you going to do? I had a question, and I meant to start out this way. I was going to ask you about you're a fellow Chicagoan.
Well, actually, I live in Lincoln. I grew up downstate. I'm in Lincoln, Illinois, so I'm in the geographical center of the state.
Oh, I thought you were in Chicago.
No, my brother used to live in Chicago for years, and he was living in Chicago when the short story was written. So that's where I picked up all the locations, and physically in my mind, my brother physically embodies both of my main protagonists so far. It's his face I see. It's his, So he was Wiley in my head as I was writing it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually from South Chicago, so I thought that was kind of funny. That you've got this story set in Chicago, but it's great fun to hear about those places in literature.
Oh yeah, and it's kind of underrepresented in you know you don't hear about a lot about Chicago unless it's the old Untouchables and it's
Hmm.
Al Capone and that stuff. There's not a lot happening in Chicago. Well, there's not a lot happening in Chicago that's good right now.
No,
But
no, indeed.
the action of this story happens in the year 2019, and
Hmm.
that's just kind of an interesting tidbit because I refuse to have COVID figure anyway into what I think is probably the most important, personally important story I'm ever going to write. So I was not going to let COVID in. So this happens just
Yeah.
prior to all of
Yeah.
that nonsense.
Well, and I do I like the fact that you did it that way though, and you didn't let it interrupt
No.
that kind of setting. That was a great choice, I think. Um, I think we tend to mark time in COVID and pre-COVID, and I think we
Right.
make entirely too much out of that. We really do.
Yeah, I agree.
But oh well. So, but you're working on a new book in the Oscar Wilde series,
Yeah. The third Oscar Jade book is
or
Eyes of
Oscar Jade. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, Oscar Wilde, he wrote one great book, and it was a great book. I mean, the one book he wrote was fantastic. Uh, yeah, Jade is, and I'm having fun with this third one. And I really the third one kind of finishes the world building of my character. So
Okay.
all three of the Jade books they're self-contained,
Hmm.
but I think you would be rewarded if you read them in sequence. He
Sure.
actually comes to Central Illinois, Lincoln and Logan County in October of 1942 on a case.
Hmm.
So I'm actually bringing him into my own hometown.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
and using locations that don't exist anymore. And so I had to I'm doing a disclaimer at the beginning. It's like the police and the sheriff's department bear no resemblance to what's happening in this story. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to get into trouble. I need
Yeah.
some crooked cops in order to make my story work. So modern day
Sure.
cops are just fine.
Absolutely.
Everything's fine
Yeah.
in Lincoln.
I have not been to Central Illinois in so long. I can't even tell you. I don't even remember
Yeah.
when the last time I was there.
Well,
So,
it
yeah.
doesn't
So
change a lot.
no, no. I from what I remember, it really doesn't. I have a book that's actually set just outside of Joliet. That
Oh,
starts
cool.
with a man killing his entire family with an axe. So but
Yeah,
that
no
doesn't
reflection
happen.
on no
Yeah.
reflection on Joliet necessarily.
No, 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 no. Well, there's a prison there, but that's another story
Mm-hmm.
entirely.
All right.
So, uh, now, so you wrote the book, and then you went to make an audiobook
Yes.
with Scott Ellis.
Oh yeah.
Describe that process for you, because I think a lot of times a lot of authors in particular get a little bit scared about
Oh,
this idea
it's
of,
intimidating, the
yeah.
idea of doing it. And I have one of my dear friends. Her name is Stacia. She from the moment first started putting the Oscar Jades out, she's like, "You need to do these in audiobook." And I'm like, "Oh, sure, right." Like I'm Lee Child or whatever. I'm just going to whip an audiobook out. Um, And initially, I started to think about it. The first thing I got, and this is an interesting commentary on our modern times. Um, I got an email saying, "Hey, we can do an artificial intelligence narration that'll cost you exactly $1,000,
Oh.
and it's going to be very lifelike, and it's going to be And I'm like,
Mm.
just reflexively, I'm like, if I have to rely on a robot, it's never going to be an audio. So
Right.
I started to poke around and I looked at a couple of websites um, looking for freelance talent
Mhm.
and to see what it was going to cost me. Now, it cost me more than $1,000, obviously,
Sure.
but I auditioned several very talented people. And I had made difficult decisions. I said no to a couple of really talented people, but
Yeah.
I heard Scott's audition and it's like, this is Wiley's voice.
Yeah.
He absolutely sells that kind of wide-eyed, this 25-year-old artist type who's still a little bit wide-eyed and by life. He's not
Yeah.
beaten down and jaded yet. And, no pun intended, but and I'm like, okay. And then I hired him, and then it's been the most amazing. Scott Ellis reads, everybody. Scott Ellis is, I cannot speak highly enough of Scott and his team. It was an amazing process. I got to he would bring me in on Zoom calls. I got to watch him actually narrate a couple of key pivotal scenes. There's a whole chapter that's basically narrated from the point of view of a drunk old man, and he is absolutely channeling a drunk old man, and it's riveting. It's just, there's another one where Wiley he interviews his first corporate job. The guy he talks to his potential boss, has a nervous breakdown during the interview process. Now that happened to me.
Oh my goodness.
I took a job at a corporate big box store. I've worked for a handful of them over the course of my career, so it will remain nameless, but I actually had and he became my supervisor, and he didn't last very long after I got into the gig. He broke down and cried during my job interview. Now that should have been a warning sign. It should have been. I should have maybe paid a little more attention to that in retrospect, but no, that absolutely happened. So I just put it right into the book.
Well, that scene in the audiobook that you're talking about is fantastic. I think it was at that point in the book that I was completely and totally invested 1,000% at that point, because it happens fairly early in the book. But it's like, wow, that is so good. It's good writing, it's good delivery, it's good everything.
Well, thank you for the writing part. I was all the way through. It's remarkable for people who have written and have not heard their words read dramatically. Yeah. It changes your life when to hear your words read dramatically and to have them read well dramatically. It's like sitting at a table read, like a TV writer or a film writer will get the cast around the table and they will have, they'll have a dramatic reading, a rehearsal. It's the most remarkable thing ever. And then, of course, there are parts in the book where there are terrible people doing terrible things, immoral things, uncomfortable things. And, I just cringe. I just like, oh my gosh. And then Scott's like, well, you wrote it, man. I'm like, don't remind me. I'm saying, oh gosh. But it works, man. It works. The whole thing works.
So Scott did the voice one of Scott's people that he worked with did the voice for my book, Codename Formula 12, which is Nazi zombies. So, if you want to talk about hearing your own words and going, oh, yeah, having a committed Nazi who also invented the zombie virus talk about it, it's it's kind of fun,
Sure.
So is there so let's say you're talking to another author, and what advice would you give them in terms of going through that process?
As far as selecting a narrator, get as many options as possible, because I heard many that were good. I heard some that had no idea, and they just, they're in it for the easy paycheck. And some of the really mediocre ones were more expensive than Scott was. So I could not make any sense of that. The value I got from Scott for what he and his team ended up producing, I feel a little guilty. I feel like I walked away. I feel like it was a steal. He really, it was amazing. I could not have asked for a better narrator.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, so I would say, what else should people know about Wiley? Is there, I started asking that question a while ago. It's because I think there's always subtext that people provide as, as you go through the interview, they think about and they're like, oh, I should have mentioned that. So how would you, oh, here's a better question. I'm standing at your table at a book event. Sell me on your book.
Well, and I kind of default to my sales blurb. It's like, what would you do if you suddenly realized that you were disappearing? Now, not in a physical sense, not like you're becoming transparent or something like that. What if little tangible pieces that validate your experience as a person begin to go away? In a small way at first, your employee ID card, your driver's license, your car insurance paperwork, your bank accounts, social security card, your investments. And then people, as your week goes on, people maybe start treating you differently. They're not sure who you are. I'm not going to give too much more away, but the end of that road is a very scary place. And the more I thought about it as I was planning it, and I got to flesh it out from the short story, and then I move on to you get to blow it up a little bit, although you have to stay visual with a screenplay because it's a story told in pictures. Then I got to get into Wiley's head, and it's like, boy, there's a lot to do here. Now, the interesting thing is that I wanted it to be a first-person story. It's Wiley saying, I said this to him, he said this to me, personal experience. Well, how do you tell the story of someone who disappears and then is gone from a first-person standpoint? And I went back to Richard Matheson for inspiration. A couple of my favorite things he did a book called Bid Time Return, which movie fans will know as Somewhere in Time, where Christopher Reeve travels back in time and falls in love with Jane Seymour in the 1920s. And that's done in first person. Well, the only way it succeeds in working as a first person story is that he wrote everything down and left it for his brother. Likewise, the story, What Dreams May Come, the protagonist dies on the second page of the novel. Okay? Mm-hmm. So it's him telling the story of his afterlife experience, which he's only able to relate because he tormented a spiritual medium until she transcribed his words and then provided them to a third party. And I'm like, okay, I think I have a delivery system. I need to figure out a way for this guy who's experiencing this traumatic experience to get the words to me. So I injected myself into the story. I am in the forward and afterward as myself, also writing from first person, but it's a little bit of like gonzo journalism. I kind of inserted myself into the story. As we were narrating it, Scott's like, I think you should do the forward and the afterward. Mm-hmm. And I was petrified. I'm like, no. I really need a professional. I need a professional to do this, you see. That's why I've come to you, because, you've got the acting ability, you've got all this. And especially when it comes to the afterward, you get into the denouement of it, where you're kind of resolving stuff. And there's an emotional punch to it. And I'm like, I was just terrified. Mm-hmm. And he talked me into doing it. And he cobbled together 2 or 3 takes using magic, and it works. So
magic, duct tape, and editing.
He's a magician. That man is a magician.
He is a magician, and he can also teach people how to do these kinds of things. And you know, and that is his value. I mean, he's amazing. He does a great job. Yeah.
Of my go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
There was about the writing process, something I wanted to get out because I didn't realize it until after I had finished. and I'm a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe. When I was a kid,
Yeah.
of course, you read the old Edgar Allan Poe stuff in school, possibly, or you watch the old movies. And if you're like me, you go seek out the source material. He did
Hmm.
an essay on writing, and he had a principle that he called unity of effect. And his
Mm.
principle of unity of effect is you have to know what emotions that you want to elicit from your reader. Before you ever write, you need to know what you want your reader to feel,
Hmm.
and you also have to have cohesion between the beginning and the end. Um,
Yeah.
the first line should reflect the last line of the piece. And not to give anybody away, if you've not listened to it or read Wiley, if you read the first sentence in chapter 1 and then read the final sentence in chapter 30, you will find, and I was astonished because I did it accidentally, but it
Hmm.
literally, I managed to do a very tight arc from beginning to end. And I'm like, I don't even know how I did that. It was the best accident that I've ever been a part of.
Well, I have the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe here behind me. Being a horror author, it's kind of expected of you.
Oh,
You have that
absolutely.
and Lovecraft on the shelf behind you. Um, and I think it really, I think that speaks well of you as a writer if you are doing that without even thinking about it. Because you're right, there has to be that thread. If there's not that thread between those, it's almost like a story's not as much of an arc as it is a big circle.
Right.
In that you have that, the tail and the tip have to relate. Otherwise, everything in between makes no sense.
And there better have been some sort of a journey for the protagonist where
Mhm.
he better not be the same person at the end
Yes.
as he
Yeah.
is at the beginning. For it all to work, there has to have been. And Joseph Campbell, his fantastic book, Hero with a Thousand Faces, his
Mhm.
other book, The Power of Myth, the journey of the hero is all
Yeah.
about growth and discovery and personal change.
Yeah.
So that's at the heart of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. At the heart, um, you have to have something that your reader's going to identify with.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
absolutely.
Well, Mark, the most important question I ever ask on all things writing is, without a doubt, where can people find your work?
The quickest and easiest way to find my stuff is my own website, which is marktheauthor.net. That is a gateway to the Amazon pages of everything I do. I've got a blog there. The website was just redone about a month ago, so I've only got one blog entry so far. But you can find Wiley, you can find all of the Oscar Jades there. It's much easier than if you look at my name in the window there. That last name is a little bit challenging. And I didn't really think that through when I became a writer. I was like, maybe I should have picked a nom de plume that was a little more manageable. So in
Loeffelholz.
Loeffelholz, exactly right.
Yeah.
And it means it's German for wooden
Yeah.
spoon. It's a direct
Yeah.
translation, spoon of wood.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah.
And so I picked an easy website name, which is marktheauthor.net. You'll find everything
Mhm.
right there, and it'll take you right where you need to go. And I
Yeah.
also will sell signed and personalized stuff off the website as well. So
Nice. Nice. Very nice. Yeah. So for the listeners, I just want to point out I'm not that brilliant with names. I lived in Germany for 3 years. So,
that'll do it.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I spent a little time in Germany in the service. I spent about 6 weeks there on an assignment, but I
Yeah.
spent 2 years in Spain and got to see a lot of Europe, and that was a lovely experience.
Yep. I lived in Berlin for 3 years. It was fantastic. Would not have traded it for the world. It was
Yeah.
fantastic.
In
Yeah.
those days, it was West Germany, kids.
Yes.
West Germany.
West Germany. I came in after the wall and I worked in the American embassy there, but my family and I drove all over Germany and we went to Spain and France and I think 14 different countries.
Oh, good for you. I don't have
Yeah.
that many.
Well, we made the most of every German holiday, which seems to literally be every week. So, yeah. Go and drink beer and enjoy the scenery.
I don't have any problem with either one of those things, as it turns out.
Well, Mark, this has been fantastic fun. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me.
Oh, Brian, it's been a pleasure. Scott reached out and he says, "Hey, you need to talk to this guy named Brian. He does a podcast." He said we've narrated for him, so I'm glad he hooked us up, and I'm happy to make your acquaintance, and I'm going to be looking up your stuff. You better believe it.
Yes, I am actually very interested in the Jade series.
Oh, I think you'll enjoy those. It's just a lot of fun.
I'm an old school noir guy.
Yeah, car chases, dames, women, violence, all the stuff. All the stuff that's good.
All the stuff we love.
Absolutely.
Well, dear listener, dear watcher, I want to thank you for hanging out with us today. Like I said before, please hit that subscribe button. Every time you watch a video and don't hit a subscribe button, an angel loses their wings and somebody steps on it and it dies. So please.
No bueno. That is no bueno.
No bueno. No bueno at all. So on behalf of All Things Writing, I am Brian the Writer with my guest Mark. And this is All Things Writing, signing off. This has been another amazing episode of All Things Writing. If you heard something that got your wheels spinning, check out the links in the show notes. Also, please follow the show and remember to leave those reviews. Those simple acts of kindness mean the world to us. Hop on over to briannowak.com, and that is Brian with a Y, and check out my latest novels. I'm on Amazon or wherever you buy your ebooks. And as a reminder, the music you heard on the show today was used under license from the artist Ryan Ancona. Thanks for listening to the show and have a blessed day.